Hello and welcome to TVB News. I'm Melissa Hekalea. Vice Premier He Lifeng will meet with U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent this weekend in Geneva for trade talks. Washington announced the planned meeting late on Tuesday, triggering a rise in stock markets in mainland China and Hong Kong. The U.S. has imposed up to 145% tariffs on Chinese goods, while Beijing responded by slapping 125% levies on U.S. products. U.S. President Donald Trump said China wanted these talks, but Beijing insists they are at the request of Washington. Nazvi Karim with more.
Vice Premier He Lifeng and U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. These are the two men who may provide the breakthrough for U.S.-China trade relations. Bessent and Chief Trade Negotiator Jameson Greer are expected to meet her in Geneva this weekend for talks that may provide the platform for resolving a trade war that is playing havoc with the global economy. It comes after weeks of tensions that have seen massive tariffs imposed on Chinese goods imported into the U.S. and retaliatory tariffs from China on a variety of American products. U.S. President Donald Trump has long said they were talking to China, a scenario Beijing denies. But the Geneva meeting is something China acknowledges. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian said at a press conference on Wednesday that the meeting was at the request of the U.S. and that China is open to balanced dialogue. He insisted that China has not softened its stance on tariffs, saying it firmly opposes indiscriminate levies by the U.S. and that Beijing's position has not changed. Trump, speaking to the press at the Oval Office while seated next to Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, said China needs a meeting more than the U.S.
And, we lost $1 trillion to China on trade because of an incompetent president that we had who preceded me, grossly incompetent. You're finding it out more and more now. And by not trading, we're losing nothing. So we're saving $1 trillion. It's a lot. But they want to negotiate and they want to have a meeting, and we'll be meeting with them at the right time. Look, they're suffering greatly. Their economy is suffering greatly because they're not doing trade with the U.S. And they made most of their money off the U.S. Don't kid yourself. They don't make the money off other countries like this. They have to sign deals with us. They want a piece of our market. We don't want a piece of their market. We don't care about their market. They want a piece of our market.
Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
Chinese authorities have announced a raft of economic stimulus measures, including interest rate cuts and a major liquidity injection. This as Beijing steps up efforts to soften the impact of the ongoing trade war with the United States. Daniel Rao tells us more.
The People's Bank of China will lower the borrowing cost of its 7-day reverse repurchase agreements, its benchmark interest rate by 10 basis points to 1.40%, effective from May 8th. Other interest rates will drop in line with the key rate. The amount of cash banks must hold as reserves, known as the reserve requirement ratio, will be cut by 50 basis points from May 15th, bringing the average level to 6.2%. People's Bank of China Governor Pan Gongsheng said the first RRR cut since September last year will release 1 trillion yuan, or $138 billion in liquidity. He said the PBOC will set up low-cost relending facilities for purchases of tech-related bonds and for investments in elderly care and services consumption. Pan said similar existing tools to support agriculture and small businesses will be enhanced. The PBOC is also trimming mortgage costs for some buyers. Authorities will help A-share-listed companies affected by U.S. tariffs to cope with difficulties. Beijing will expand a pilot scheme allowing insurance companies to invest in stock markets by an additional 60 billion yuan, or $8.31 billion. The announcements come shortly after American and Chinese officials said U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Chief Trade Negotiator Jameson Greer will meet China's top economic official He Lifeng in Switzerland this weekend for talks. The talks are the first opportunity for the two sides to de-escalate tensions sparked by U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs. Some analysts say the Chinese economic stimulus measures are preventative in nature, as Beijing and Washington's trade negotiations may prove lengthy. Dan Orell, TV News.
The U.S. has announced a ceasefire deal with Yemen's Houthis, but the group says it does not include sparing Israel. U.S. President Donald Trump said it would stop airstrikes against the Houthis, who've agreed to halt attacks on U.S. ships. The U.S. said an F-18 fighter jet went overboard on the USS Harry S. Truman aircraft carrier while trying to land. It's the second mishap involving a U.S. fighter in the Red Sea after an aircraft last month slipped off the carrier's hangar deck. The Houthis, meanwhile, are assessing the damage of an Israeli strike on its seaport in Hodeidah. Israel's military launched airstrikes against the Houthis that it says fully disabled the international airport in the Yemeni city of Sana'a. They were the second round of Israeli attacks in Yemen in response to Sunday's Houthi missile airstrike on Ben Gurion International Airport. Israel, according to sources, is unhappy with the U.S. Houthi ceasefire, particularly because the Houthis have continued to launch attacks on Israel. President Xi Jinping will soon arrive in Moscow to kick off his 4-day official state visit, during which he hopes to deepen bilateral ties and attend Russia's Victory Day military parade. Danny Zhou has more.
An article credited to Xi, published in the Russian Gazette newspaper, has called on China and Russia to oppose all forms of hegemonism in politics and resist attempts to sow discord in friendship and mutual trust. Referencing the strong camaraderie between the two nations, Xi wrote that their relationship has a clear historical logic, a powerful internal driver, and profound cultural heritage. A relationship that is neither directed at nor affected by any third party. Xi pointed out that global deficits in peace, development, security, and governance continue to widen unabated, and countries must resolutely uphold the post-war international order and firmly defend international fairness and justice. With this year marking the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Soviet Union's Great Patriotic War, the Kremlin is set to commemorate the defeat of Nazi Germany in World War II with a pomp-filled military parade marching through time-honored Red Square on May the 9th. Aside from the Chinese leader, the leaders of Brazil, Vietnam and Belarus will be among the guests. Intensive rehearsals for upcoming performances were held in the Russian capital, where banners and flags fluttered in solemnity. Contingents from the Chinese People's Liberation Army Honor Guard will also participate in the parade, with appearances planned in both Moscow and Minsk. This will be President Xi's second attendance at the victory fete in the past decade. Back in 2015, he and his wife Peng Liyuan, together with leaders of other delegations, visited Moscow and reviewed the military procession. As Beijing is locked in a trade war with Washington, Xi is expected to hold talks with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin on Thursday and sign numerous agreements to buoy the no-limit strategic partnership with Moscow. Putin's foreign policy advisor said the two leaders would discuss trade and Russia's supply of oil and gas to China. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
Today, Roman Catholic cardinals will begin the task of electing a new pope. In a ritual dating back to medieval times, the cardinals will file into the Vatican's frescoed Sixtine Chapel after a public mass in St. Peter's Basilica and start their secret conclave for a successor to Pope Francis, who died last month. No pope has been elected in the first day of a conclave for centuries. Voting could continue for several days before the necessary two-thirds majority vote to become the 267th pontiff is achieved. Cardinals have offered different assessments of what they are looking for in the next pontiff. While some have called for continuity with Francis's vision of a greater openness and reform, others have said they want to embrace old traditions. No clear favorite has emerged, although Italian Cardinal Pietro Parolin and Filipino Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle are considered the front runners. Welcome back. India fired missiles into Pakistani-controlled territory in several locations early today, killing dozens of people, including a child. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif called it an act of war and vowed to retaliate. India said it was striking infrastructure used by militants linked to last month's massacre of tourists in the Indian-controlled portion of Kashmir. Nazvi Karim has more.
Shots in the dark on the Kashmir border separating Pakistan and India. A loud bang, possibly shelling, with reports that troops from each side exchanged fire. In Pakistan-administered Muzaffarabad in Kashmir, damage to a local mosque. India said they targeted 9 sites used by militants linked to the April 22nd killing of tourists in the Indian-controlled area of Kashmir. Pakistan's military said 26 people were killed, including women and children, by Indian strikes in the Pakistan side of Kashmir and Punjab. Around 40 others were injured and another 5 killed during exchanges across the border. At least 3 civilians were killed on the Indian side by Pakistan shelling. This house in Poonch on the Indian side destroyed, and the injured treated in hospital. India said they had a right to attack.
Our intelligence monitoring of Pakistan-based terrorist modules indicated that further attacks against India were impending. There was thus a compulsion both to deter and to preempt. India exercised its right to respond and preempt, as well as deter more such cross-border attacks. These actions were measured, non-escalatory, proportionate, and responsible.
Pakistan has denied backing the April 22nd attacks and said it would respond. Its military said it had shot down 3 Indian fighter jets, with debris falling into the Indian side of Kashmir.
That they have no evidence, they have no facts, and they ran away from the investigation, which Pakistan had offered, and they attacked our civilians, they attacked our mosque today, they attacked 5 localities. Pakistan will now respond, and respond very, very effectively. Make no mistake, because our desire for peace should not be mistaken for our weakness.
Meanwhile, tensions on both sides as survivors in Pakistan prepare for the funerals of those killed. China, which has invested heavily in Pakistan infrastructure, expressed regret over India's action, calling for calm. The Kashmir border conflict is decades old, with 2 wars fought, and has long been a tinderbox waiting to explode. The latest escalation poses a major test of restraint for the 2 nuclear-armed countries. Nazri Karim, TVB News.
Back locally, a 4-month-old boy who suffered a brain hemorrhage is suspected of having been abused. He remains in critical condition at Queen Mary Hospital. Police have arrested a 57-year-old woman in connection with the case. She'll appear at Eastern Magistrates Courts tomorrow. Mimo Singhai reports.
The baby has been admitted to the intensive care unit of Queen Mary Hospital. Sources say he was in a half-conscious state on Monday afternoon when family members took him to Glen Eagles Hospital. He was then transferred to Queen Mary Hospital. The hospital alerted the police after discovering the baby had suffered a brain hemorrhage and suspected he is a victim of shaken baby syndrome. After investigation, the police arrested a female relative of the baby on Tuesday evening. Sources say the suspect moved into the residential unit of the baby's family in January this year. Shaken baby syndrome is a brain injury which happens when an infant or toddler is shaken violently. Such action can cause serious long-term brain damage, leading to permanent disabilities and even death. A pediatrician said shake baby syndrome cases that end up in hospitals are often in a moderate or severe condition.
Diagnosis is not difficult. As to who is the so-called perpetrator, who is the person who commit this deed, I think it's difficult, but it's not the role of a pediatrician to immediately try to determine who has done this. Our job is to try to stabilize the baby, and then to stabilize the baby, to treat the baby as much as possible.
Horn suggests people should seek medical help quickly if they notice something unusual about a baby in the family. Mamusnai, TVB News.
The government is considering limiting the amount of traffic entering the High Island Reservoir area. Authorities will look into arranging shuttles to carry visitors to the landmark and are setting up an appointment system to manage the flow of people. This after an average of 3,000 people visited the tourist attraction each day over the course of the Labor Day Golden Week holidays. Secretary for Culture, Sports and Tourism Rosanna Law stressed the area cannot sustain large amounts of traffic over the long term and will look into arranging transport between Pak Tam Chung and the reservoir. Some lawmakers suggested the rolling out of online platforms that display the real-time people flow at the site. Hong Kong's High Island Reservoir in Sai Kung has become a tourist hotspot after the site was promoted on various social media platforms on the Chinese mainland. The road to the east dam of the reservoir was jam-packed with vehicles during the Labor Day Golden Week, despite temporary measures adopted by authorities to alleviate the traffic problem. Samantha Lee reports.
Mainland tourists Guo Jingjing and her friend Yang Yaru took a minibus to the Sai Kung Country Park. From there, they had to take another minibus to get to the dam. Along the way, just one lane with two-way traffic in most sections of the road. There were always oncoming vehicles. Taxis had to put up on the curb in order to avoid other vehicles. The duo reached the East Dam after a half-hour ride. Guo Jingjing said the site is renowned for this section of the McLehose Trail. They came to enjoy the landscape, which she described as stunning. Recently, there have been complaints from visitors who called for more transport services. During the Golden Week, the government rolled out a series of measures, including enlarging the passing places on the road to the East Dam and demanding minibus operators to strengthen their services. Stephen Feng, general manager of a minibus operator, said his company rented extra minibuses from other operators to step up services for the tourists. He said 3 extra people were deployed to assist visitors in lining up and paying fees to shorten the boarding time. Legislator Stanley Lee said the cause of the traffic problems is the imperfect design of the road. He said traffic flow could be smoother if there are more passing places on the road. He also suggested the government set a limit for the number of taxis and minibuses that are allowed to go to the West Dam and arrange some sightseeing buses to carry the visitors out of the East Dam. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
Good news for movie lovers. Cinema Day will return on Saturday this year. Residents can enjoy films for $30 on the day. Posters about the event are displayed outside this theater in Mong Kok. Starting from noon today, members of the public can buy the $30 tickets at the box offices of all theaters and on their online websites. Each person is allowed a maximum of 4 tickets if they buy them at the theater. Meanwhile, the limit of online ticket buying depends on the restrictions of each cinema. The Independent Commission Against Corruption, or ICAC, has set up a new exhibition hall showcasing a number of items, including a ledger owned by former police chief superintendent Peter Godber that documented the bribes he accepted. The exhibition will be open to the public starting tomorrow. No prior registrations are needed. The theme of the exhibition is Hong Kong's anti-corruption story. Visitors will have the opportunity to engage with a number of interactive displays and learn about the corrupt practices of the police force in the past, with Godber being one of the high-profile corruption cases handled by the ICAC. The exhibition also incorporated elements of AI, with DeepSeek offering anti-graft advice to the public. The hall will be open between 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. on weekdays and between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. on Saturdays. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.